there's somehow a split between what's us and what is the daimon, what's us and what's that creature that's beside us. And the whole point of it is for them to be in this beautiful unison all the time, to be working together, but also recognize the difference.
Welcome to Soror Mystica, a podcast exploring life's mysteries and magic through its symbols.
I'm Mariana Lewis, an archetypal tarotist.
And I'm astrologer Cristina Farella.
And just as the Soror Mystica guided the alchemist through his holy work, we hope to be your mystic sisters in these conversations, guiding you deeper into the symbolic life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our episode all about familiars. We are both very excited for this one because we both have two familiars that we love dearly, and that we talk about all the time. They're the really the center of most of our conversations, I think, at this point. So we'll definitely talk about them later. So before we start with familiars, let's get into what we're reading. What are you reading right now, Cristina?
Right now I'm reading this really beautiful book called Poets in a Landscape, and it's by Gilbert Hyatt, and he apparently was a lecturer at Columbia, from the 40s through the 70s. He's a classicist, and it's really adorable. It takes the lives of the 7, maybe most, according to him, influential poets of classical Rome, and or not classical Rome, but just like ancient times, through the Roman era, and really talks about their lives and the environments that they were living in. So the first chapter, for example, is about Catullus, who I love, because he writes a lot of really violent love and hate poetry, and that's my vibe. And so he is talking about the different places in Italy where he lived. So he was born in Verona, and he wound up living out on some beautiful lake and living out his days in sadness out there as a young man, and he died young. So it's this kind of earthy, it's almost like it's not trying to be ecology literature, but it has that sort of feeling. And then it's really just animating the poets through their work and these little biographical essays. So I'm really super enjoying that. It's wonderful.
That sounds amazing. I am a crazy person right now.
You're reading everything right now.
Oh my God. It's really an actual problem. So I'm reading the Red Book. I think that's kind of the main one, because everybody is doing extraordinary classes that I'm very excited for, read through classes. With Salome Institute is the one doing the Red Book read through, and I love the Salome Institute. Check them out. And then Morbid Anatomy. There it is. Morbid Anatomy is doing a read through of The Myth of the Goddess by Anne Baring and Jules Cashford. And then I'm also doing that other one with the Divine Comedy. So I am reading everything. That is exhausting.
I'm also peeking in on the Inferno, on Dante's Inferno, was sitting with that, and my partner's reading it, so I keep stealing it, and it's just really great.
So we're both exhausted with our reading. I'm tired today. I'm out of it, but that's okay. I've done already a lot of reading today, so my brain is a little bit fried, but it's good because we're talking about familiars, which are easy to talk about because we love them and they are attached to our hearts. So why don't we introduce our familiars? So Cristina, who are your familiars?
My familiars are Federico and John Baby. They are 2 cats.
Yeah.
We love them. They are very different. Federico is a big boy, kind of just domestic short hair, and he has the personality of a man.
He does have the personality of a man.
He's a Leo, and he really loves conversations and being included in human activities.
He likes to carry around a blanket.
He carries around a blanket. I think that's he thinks he killed it, and he's showing us. I've researched it. It's like an instinct. It's really sad. And then Baby is a little gray and brown tabby.
He's not that little.
He's little.
He's not that little. He's a grown boy.
No, he is. He's kind of chubby. And I love him. And he is a Cancer, and he's just He's very sensitive and he's very talkative, and he keeps me company when I pull tarot cards, actually, which
Yeah.
Federico does not care about at all. So
Yeah.
tell us about your familiars, please.
Okay, so I have my two kitty cats, Mowgli. So the story goes that my husband was walking home from the train, and then Mowgli like popped out of a bush and was like hello, and followed my husband home. And then these like shitty kids who were in the neighborhood like ran out and tried to chase him, and Mowgli ran up
Mm.
like 50 feet of a tree and was so high that no matter, like, we tried to get ladders and nothing reached him. I called the ASPCA, I called the fire department, I called everybody, and they're like, we don't get cats out of trees. So
Mm.
I went to my mom's backyard and we took a big piece of bamboo and bologna and fed him bologna off bamboo sticks for a couple days. And then my husband found a truck, a roofing truck that like had a huge like 60-foot ladder on it, and so they came and they rescued
Oh my
Mowgli.
God, that's so
Yeah.
cute.
And then we have Pandora, who is my absolute darling, precious thing. I am very convinced she's new to the cat body. Like,
Mm.
she used to be a
Hmm.
person and she's still getting used to being in the cat body. She doesn't totally understand why she can't like she looks at you in the eye with this severity that's like, what are you saying? You know, it's like she's really trying to understand all the time. And she's also a very sweet girl, but she's a calico and very fussy. And so you can only touch her when she's in the kitchen or when she's in the living room. You can't touch her in the office. You can't touch her in the bedroom. You can't look at her too long. I can't imagine my life without her. Um, so, why don't we begin with defining what is a familiar? What do we mean by that? So, I know that
Hmm.
you have a little resource for us.
Yeah. So, a familiar, just to say out loud, like what I understand it to be, is a creature that guides a witch through her working. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be this sort of spirit that takes the form of an animal. And I think common familiars are always cats, dogs,
Mm-hmm.
hares, frogs, snails, toads, butterflies, wasps, and snakes, probably,
I
right?
would
Things,
bet, yeah.
probably bats too, but things like that that show up in like imagery of the Wicked Witch. They always have like a frog or a crow or something like that, a
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
raven.
crows for sure.
So
Owls
I
too.
exactly right. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
anything that has honestly a kind of maybe a more nocturnal orientation as an animal seems like a
Mm-hmm.
no-brainer for familiar, but like rodents, I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
they're not. Are they nocturnal? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
I don't
think
think
some of them
bunnies
are.
are.
I think some
Hmm.
of them. The rats by my building certainly are.
Lovely. There you go. You're right, actually. um, I have a more, I have a sort of academic ish definition from a book called Witchcraft in the Middle Ages by Jeffrey Burton Russell, which is an interesting study. I got this for like $1 in the basement of the Strand on a
Perfect.
whim, and yeah, it's cool.
Perfect.
Anyway, so he writes the familiar, a manifestation of lesser demons, sprites, and other only mildly malevolent spirits, was an essential part of the witch phenomenon and mentioned in numerous trials. So he's talking about like witchcraft, inquisition stuff in the Middle
Yeah.
Ages. Sometimes the witch has a pet, and he makes all these crazy examples of pet names, like Galiphas, Bara, or Baracum, or Federvish, which is just ridiculous. But the increasing importance of the worship of the devil in witchcraft caused a confusion between the pet demon and the devil. And so we have this sort of conflation between the devil and familiars. And he
Yeah.
also, there's another kind of idea here. He writes, often the familiar was supposed to exist in a purely spiritual form, but sometimes it was given a material shape, almost always the form of an animal. The roots of this notion are two. The animal forms that the devil and demons have always taken, forms probably derived from old hunting cults, and the even more ancient idea found in the sorcery of many societies that the sorcerer himself can change his shape. And so, in a lot of kind of attacks on witchcraft, witches were accused a lot of times in like the early modern period, for example, of taking the shape of another animal and going out and destroying crops, or killing people's, taking the form of a wolf and killing people's cows in the middle of the night, and then they would have an excuse for burning the witch or whatever they were going to do. But the shape shifting nature and the merge between the witch and her familiar is kind of always a co-presence, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the text that I always really like to think about when I'm talking about the witch, or rather when I'm talking about the familiar, is the play The Witch of Edmonton, which is a pretty, I guess, somewhat obscure Jacobean play. It's written by William Rowley, Thomas Dekker, and John Ford in 1621. And I only know about it because we had to read it in that class I took with Tanya.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I think the class was technically called like necromancy in Elizabethan England or something like that. I don't know.
Mm.
The grad center was so weird with their their
But she
offerings.
had such good classes.
She really
That,
did.
God, my Saturnian enemy. For anyone who's listening and like, what, Mariana and I met in grad school, and I was like, I guess a little bit ahead of you in terms of coursework or something.
Yeah,
I
I
did my
think you
thesis
were. Yeah,
first or
yeah.
something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But like, I took this class with this professor who was this amazing, like, classics and Shakespeare, like Oxford, Yale, brilliant woman. And I forget the name of my class, but it was something like, I think it was like tragic women and their Shakespearean counterparts, or like classical women in tragedy and their Shakespearean counterparts. And it was all about mothers and daughters, and the complexity of the feminine in plays. And I loved this teacher, and I loved writing papers for her. And then she became my thesis advisor, and she just chewed me up and spit
Mm.
me out. And it was so bad. It was such a hard
She
thing.
was really bad. I asked her also to be my advisor briefly because I asked her and I asked one other professor and I wasn't sure who would be a better fit for me. And then she looked at me in the eyes. She's like, you're not gonna enjoy it if I'm your advisor. This is gonna
Mhm.
be a miserable experience. My standards are gonna be pretty rigorous. And I was
She
like,
was exacting. It was
yeah.
crazy. And I'm a little bit too Jupiterian. I mean, she liked me as a student, but I'm not, I don't have the same training as her. And nobody does, though. That's the
No,
thing.
I mean,
So,
yeah, she was a hard ass. I mean, that's
hmm.
just what it comes down to. She
Hmm.
was ridiculous.
But I
Yeah,
really wanted her approval so bad. And
I
that was just also
know.
part of my Saturn return. So, lesson learned, everyone, be nice to yourself during your Saturn return.
I also think the
Hmm.
lesson is if you're going to write a thesis, go with the easy professor because that's always the option you
Yeah,
want, just
it's
because
true.
it's too much. It's too much to never have a single page be allowed to be delayed or anything because
Yeah,
that's,
she hated everything
yeah,
I
she
wrote.
couldn't
And
deal
I
with it.
know I'm not dumb. So, it was just very stressful.
It was a lot. um,
Anyway,
yeah, but
so
she
yeah.
had some amazing classes, and
Hmm.
so we had this class on necromancy, and it was just wild. So in The Witch of Edmonton, basically the plot. I mean, the plot is really weird all over the place, but it starts off with this woman. Her name is Elizabeth Sawyer. She's an older woman, and the town just rejects her. They're like, "You're an old woman. You're weird. You live by yourself. You must be a witch."
Hmm.
And she's not a witch, and she's very angry, and she's like, why can't I just be part of the town? Like, why do people insist on me being a witch? And she gets so mad at it and mad about it that eventually she's like, screw it, I'm a witch. And so she invokes the devil. And she's like, I'll go be a witch, if that allows me to like have my vengeance on my neighbors who have treated me so badly. And so then she has this black dog come to her. And so this black dog is the other character, the other main character in the play. And so it's the witch and her familiar that are really the two
Hmm.
ones, and how they're sharing this duality of good and evil, because Elizabeth Sawyer is not really evil. And most of the evil she tries to do doesn't really work. But her familiar, the dog, is quite evil. And actually, the play is supposed to be performed with the dog as like a person, who's just like dressed up as a dog and like walking
Hmm.
around and like convincing everybody to do bad things. And so most of the play, the dog just goes around to other people and convinces them to do mischief. But also, the play is so good because everybody can just do their own mischief. And the question is, does the devil even really have a part to play here, or
Hmm.
does it just offer the opportunity to participate in the evil? And I just think that's a really interesting way of thinking about the familiar, because I think today, for us modern witches, us modern spiritual people who, sometimes will talk about our pets as familiars. It's not just our sweet little babies. It's not our sweet little fur babies. It's
Mm.
actually, they have wills of their own that are quite malevolent.
I feel like my cats have malevolent wills a lot of the
Oh my
time,
God.
but like
Yeah.
I feel like it's true that the familiar is absolutely connected with the devil and that there's something demonic about that. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, so what? And maybe again, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's good.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
that's why I like this play so much, because, it's from 1621, so we're past the like hyper conservatism of like the medieval era. So there's a little bit of self-awareness at that point in history, and so they're kind of like, here's the witch's familiar who we know is evil and know that it is the representative of the devil, and yet people are really doing all the evil on their own.
Yeah.
Like the devil's not really playing that much of a part. And in the end, I think that Elizabeth Sawyer gets burned at the stake for being
Mm.
a witch, and her dog Tom, his name is Tom, goes off and is just like, I guess I'll find someone else to mess up their
Ah.
life. And he's like, I'm gonna thrive. I'm just gonna be, going along my merry way. So it's just interesting to think about how
Mhm.
it is this evil counterpart, and that was kind of the point of like the witch's familiar, was to, often witches would get persecuted if they had pets. Honestly,
Mhm.
if they like had a
Mhm.
crow that tended to live outside their hut or cottage or whatever, like, oh, obviously a witch, you
Right.
know.
And so what does that also show us? It's like the connection to nature is not
Yeah.
to be trusted in a normal, quote unquote, normal society. And so a witch is somebody who is many things, but in my perspective, is someone who has a connection to the earth through herbs and stones and medicines and food and poison and animals and
Yes.
knowing cycles, knowing about the moon, for example. And so the sort of connection to the familiar and seeing that as a demonized thing to me is just like another sort of sign of like Christianity labeling things that are pagan, to be really really bad and
Yeah.
obviously a problem. So I think that that's so sad because we get so much joy from our animals in our
Hmm.
lives. They're so special, and I even get joy from walking past a bunch of geese and like waving at them,
You really
or
do like geese. Geese like you too.
they're just here, they're just hanging. But yesterday, oh my god, I actually went on a walk yesterday and I didn't text you these pictures because I was like, I text Mariana too much. But I was
No.
looking down at my phone and I took a walk that I normally don't take up a big hill.
Mhm.
And I got to the top of the hill. I'm like fumbling with my music and I look up and literally next to me is a huge turkey. It's as tall as me. And I'm only like 5 foot some. I'm like
It's
not
as
tall.
tall as you.
It was gigantic and it was kind of like, excuse you, ma'am. And I got so delighted. I was like, oh my God. And it was really cool. But I just felt so after that, I saw him. It was a boy. And then soon after, two big groups of geese. And then after that, a heron flying really low. And I never see those. And I was like, what is going on? And
I think you're
then on
having your full witch transition now at this point. You keep
my
calling the birds to
shuffle
you.
my shuffle of my music put on this song called Birds. And I was like, I don't even know this song. I screenshotted it. I'm going to send you this whole presentation when we're done with this conversation. But man, I was really floored by that. So I think that like the sort of again, that mystical or just connection with the animal, it feels so divine sometimes, and it feels so natural in a lot of
Yeah.
ways that I think that people who have familiars and who love pets and love animals are just, yeah, naturally a little bit like witchy or a little bit kind of
Hmm.
um, what is the word I'm looking for? Not anachronistic, but just different in a really
Yeah.
special way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I agree. I think that um, it's something that you were saying about how being connected to the animal side of things is exactly what the witch represents in a lot of ways. It represents this connection to the natural world, because that is exactly what is rejected in
Hmm.
patriarchy, and we know the witch is very much a symbol of what is rejected in patriarchy, the empowered feminine. And so I think what's interesting about the familiars that the witch is usually associated with. We have cats and dogs. Those are the two ones that we most of us know at this point. But a lot of times, like you'll see little stories of like um, as you were saying, like frogs and salamanders and bees and stinging things and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of animals that are more vile to us. And I think that's part of it too. They're associated with these gross, icky
Mm-hmm.
things because these are just as much of nature as all the other things, and yet they're also what we reject and see as uncomfortable for us, and they make us squeamish and grossed out. Um, a lot of times there was like stories about like snakes sucking on witches' boils and like like nursing frogs and like these things that the witches would do because their bodies were linked to the animal as
Mm-hmm.
well, right? And I think that that's such a beautiful point, how it's brought into the carnal, right? The animal is the animal part of experience that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the human experience, which is the carnal experience, the corporeal experience. And yet this is exactly what the height of, let's say, Christian patriarchy would reject. They're always seeking the spiritual experience that is completely divorced from the animal side.
Mm-hmm.
So the witch is completely invested in that animal nature and bound to it in a really interesting and kind of fascinating way.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And there's also a link between those kinds of like more quote unquote, gross creatures or vile creatures and like the presence of poison, right? In a
Yeah.
snake's venom or in a
Yeah.
toad's skin or even like wasps and bees, like they have their stingers. And I think that there is like the fear of the power of nature too, that speaks through the rejection of the witch who knows exactly what herb to harvest to put in your tea to make your tongue go numb or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's just it's like the shadow. We're putting shadow into the witch and into the animals that she associates with, which is just very silly. And I think that yeah, like I'm just having like five ideas at once, but did I think I told you my like frog on the window story?
No.
I think that maybe a long time ago. I don't know. Anyway, I was just home at my mom's house in Westchester, and I was visiting with my family. There was like a lot of family drama going on at this point in time, and it was when I was in grad school. So back in that era, it was before I knew you, and I looked at our like sliding glass door, and there was like a tiny frog on the door, and I was like, "Oh, so cute! Love frogs." Took a picture of it. I was like, "Frog, yes." And it was just really sweet. And I don't see a lot of frogs around my mom's house. I'm sure that they're there. She lives kind of
I've
like
never
near the
seen a frog
woods.
in New York City.
Yeah, it wasn't in the city. It was up in Westchester, so it was not,
Close enough to the city.
but still, yeah, exactly. So I was like, that's so cute. And then I went about my life. And then probably a week later, she and I actually went to a medium in Westchester together.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this really, really crazy experience, which is a whole other story of like, connecting with her parents' spirits through this woman,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
really, really profound. But the medium just said to me, "Did you see a frog recently?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "It was really small, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw a tiny frog." And I'm like crying at this point because I'm like, "Oh my God."
Immediately,
And
yeah.
and she was like, that was an expression of something from your grandmother. And she
Oh,
was
wow.
like sending you a hello. And anytime you see something like that, you have to like take that as her. And same thing with the full moon. And I was like, damn it, I love this. So I think that it's to think about the familiar as this kind of like demon aiding the witch is, yes, that's how they're characterized, but we also have a way of contacting something that's, again, divine through
Yeah.
the animal world, which is really important, I think. So, yeah, that is something that is, I think about that all the time, and I'm just like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think that, I know that you know a lot about the daemon, and I think that this is a really good point to kind of cross into that territory because, as I was saying before, most of us, when we think of familiars, we don't think of them as evil spirits. We've moved past that connotation with them. And so thinking of the more ancient kind of conception of the daemon and what that represents, I think gets us a little bit closer to how we think about them today, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that's such a great point. And so, I think that for our purposes, because we're lucky to be living in a moment where we've been able to reclaim the witch and reclaim her familiar, and reclaim the beauty of having an occult practice, whatever that winds up looking like for all of us as individuals. We get to remember that the demon, right? The word demon is actually just a transformation of the Greek word daimon, which
Mm-hmm.
is spelled Daimon.
Mm-hmm.
And like the daimon was considered to be this kind of interstitial spirit, like a teeny tiny, invisible but present spirit that flitted kind of between the mortal realm and the divine, and kind of like messengers. But there is this really fantastic kind of series of descriptions of the birth of the soul or the creation of a new life in Plato's Timaeus, where, I won't go into all of the details, but there's like singing mermaids, there's like the
Mm-hmm.
fates spinning threads, there's just like all these crazy images that you're like, okay, Plato, you want to banish poets from the Republic, and you're being very poetical right now. Um, but thinking about the daimon is considered to be a spirit that you're kind of like assigned to when you're choosing your life's path, and they take a special shape or a form, and they help you kind of continue to play out fate. Because what happens is we meet our daimon, we kind of, the fates select our thread, and then we're born, and we forget everything that happened prior
Yeah.
to our birth. And the daimon is considered to be a spirit that follows us through life, making sure that we stay on that path, even if we're feeling like we're not on a particular path. Your daimon is a guiding spirit that helps you achieve the kind of pattern or shape or promise of your destiny. And I just love that idea. So the daimon and the sort of guide or the companion spirit, to me, it's very much connected to the familiar, which is considered to be a little demon that lives in your house and
Mm-hmm.
helps you do things. So
Yeah.
that's definitely, it has to be part of that.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, the word itself, I think, as you were saying, like it comes straight from that idea, and so I think that they're absolutely tied. The conception of this invisible spirit that guides your life and guides, your will, and of course, there's a if we're thinking about things in that very staunch Christian way, anything that's not the Holy Spirit itself will be connected to some kind of evil idea as well.
Mm,
I
mm,
think that something that when we were talking about this a little bit earlier, we mentioned Philip Pullman's novel, his Dark Materials, or a series of novels in which the the daimon is very much like a real thing. It lives. It's a physical entity that lives outside the person. And so what's so interesting about that series is that, it's not spoilers, but just so you know, as you go, I haven't read the whole thing. I've only read the first one, but I've watched the whole HBO show. And, as it goes through, they start to move into other, worlds where not everybody, everybody has the same essences, but not everybody has it externalized in that way. So
mm,
in this world that we meet, that the golden compass is set in, that daimon is an animal who is outside of them. And so it is understood as their soul, right?
mhm,
So as their, and it's one of the interesting things about that too is that it's sort of this contrasexual element too, which kind of like mirrors a little bit of Jungian thinking and how the
mm,
anima and the animus kind of feel like there's internal opposition that kind of gets projected into this idea of soul. I mean, it's all sorts of complicated and needs to be updated and all of that, but it is just an interesting idea of how the animal, the daimon, really kind of connects to this idea of what the soul is, and how it's slightly different from us. Like there's somehow a split between what's us and what is the daimon, what's us and what's that creature that's beside us. And the whole point of it is for them to be in this beautiful unison all the time, to be working together, but also recognize the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to make of that all the time, but I do think it's a really beautiful idea of
Mm-hmm.
of what this daimon is and what this idea of soul is as well.
Yeah, I was obsessed with that book when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I
you
would read
said,
it
yeah.
every summer. I would just be like be my like beach book, which is ridiculous. And I would read it always in the summertime. And um, I really loved that the daimon, right? The book has like this young girl protagonist, and she has to go on
Mm-hmm.
this crazy adventure. And it's just like all very kind of steampunk and like interesting. It's about like science and
And
inventions
sin.
and animals and sin. Yeah. And so the daimons in that story are able to like, when you're a kid, your daimon is always able to change shape. Like they are shape shifting all the time because you're
Yeah,
trying to find your true form as a
right.
person. And then when you become of age, it settles into one particular animal. And I was like, that's so cool. And then the whole drama of that book is that the bad guys are like trying to do this technological thing where they're splitting children's daimons from them. So like
Yeah,
breaking that energetic connection somehow, and it's like killing children. It's like very scary, but I think it does say this like body, soul, human, divine thing is like
yeah.
essential for us. And I do think, again, like when we're in contact with the animal realms, that is what we're reminding ourselves of. Even if we have domesticated pets, there's something really wild in their eyes, in their,
Oh my gosh,
in their
yeah.
behaviors.
Yeah.
So,
And how we bond with them. And I think that this is kind of how we think about it today. Like I have often dreamed of my cats in a way that's very maybe about them, but very obviously representative of some part of myself that I'm locating in them.
mm,
Like for years, I used to have this cat named Angel, and she was a little bitch of a cat. And she was cranky as all hell. I had her since I was 9, and she never wanted to belong to anyone. And I was like, "You will be mine, and I will force you to love it." And she said, "Absolutely not." And so we battled for years. And then she mellowed out when she was like 13 or so, and lived till
that's a
she was
long time.
21. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we really bonded in the last like third of her life. But I used to dream of her always being injured in the right
Mm,
arm, just like
mm,
over and over and over again. And I, the feelings I'd have of deep sorrow for not being able to protect her, and all of these dreams were coming up right when I was doing the worst of my, childhood work and looking backwards to that period of my life. And it was very obvious that like there was some soul thing that was wrapped up, that we were wrapped up in
mm.
together, even though like she was not this sweet little, I mean, she was named Angel, but she wasn't one at all. She was miserable old crotchety lady. She used to smack us all the time, and like
Oh.
I mean, she was a sweet girl, but she also was not the kind of cat that you dream about being your darling thing. And yet I kept dreaming of her in this way of saying, well, she's injured and I need to heal her.
Mm.
And I think that we all have those kinds of dreams when it comes to our pets of needing to protect them or heal them, or they're running away from us, or we're trying to return to them. There's something about how we're bound to them, how we project some soul piece of ourselves
Mm.
onto them and feel. And I mean, it's not only projection. We're also connecting to them in some really profound way that is far deeper than language, because we can't, at least, I mean, sometimes I think that I'm talking to Pandora, but I don't know always for sure. She's very good at seeing. Do you know? This is totally a tangent. Um, do you know that she started to use the box, but she needs encouragement.
You told me
So
this. This
this
is
is what.
so absurd.
So my cat Pandora, who is the darling of my life, likes to poop in the tub. It's disgusting. It's horrible. She does this because she's fussy. She's fussy about the litter. She's fussy about the smell. She's fussy if someone's in the bathroom. All of the things, she's fussy. So if she gets a little bit like bothered that day, she's like, "Here's your gift. Congratulations." And then it's so awful. And we've tried a lot of different things to like get her to not do this, and she keeps doing it. And so what I've tried lately is just going into the bathroom when I hear her scratch in the tub, because she always scratches first. We have to keep our ears open all the time.
Mm.
And if she scratches in the bathroom, I run in and I say, "You are a good girl. You can do the right thing. You can do the right thing." And she looks at me and she's like, "I think I understand you." And she always goes in her box. All I need to do is stand there and encourage her to do the right thing, and she'll do it. So
This
if
is
that's not
ridiculous.
proof that she's was
A
once a
demon?
person
A demon?
or a demon, who knows exactly what she's doing.
So while you were talking about your right arm
Yeah.
dream, I was thinking about it. Just kind of sparked something in my brain because obviously I can't ever stop thinking about random astrological stuff. So in the constellation Orion, there's a star, and it's like known as the star of the right shoulder. And so like right
Mm.
arm, right shoulder stuff comes up in like the warrior. And I need to kind of remind myself of the symbolism of that star, but it's the star named Bellatrix, which is the star of the right arm or the right shoulder. And you happen to have that perfectly trine your north node.
Look
And
at that.
so, mm-hmm,
Yeah, that's wild. It's
mm-hmm.
also always more so her shoulder than like the rest of her
Yeah,
arm.
that's so
Yeah.
weird. I'm going to have to look into Bellatrix for you and see what's there. But this is a good
Bellatrix.
moment for everyone. Don't ever
Wow.
sleep on these connections that you have about images and dreams, because there's just usually something to push on a little bit
It helps.
deeper.
It helps to have a Cristina nearby to tell you what it is.
It helps to have a Mercurial as a friend who is never not thinking about the magic of what random word someone just said, and then I distract myself for like a really long time.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
it's extraordinary.
that's really
Um,
interesting.
wow, wow. Well, that's a thing that I'm going to bring to my analyst and we'll talk about for a while, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that, returning to this idea of the daimon, Jung talked a bit about the daimon, and I was just kind of just googling some of the things he said, and I found this quote by James Hillman just a little while before we started that I think is really beautiful. And so Hillman says, "The soul of each of us is given a unique daimon before we are born, and it has selected an image or pattern that we live on Earth. This soul companion, the daimon, guides us here. In the process of arrival, however, we forget all that took place and believe we come empty into this world. The daimon remembers what is in your image and belongs to your pattern, and therefore your daimon is the carrier of your destiny." And I think that this is so pretty and connects so much to what Jung often said about the daimon, which obviously goes right back to the Platonic idea of it, which is that it is something that is very much concerned with destiny and purpose of life and the remembrance of our purpose in life. And also, it has a darkness to it, this deep unconscious evil or darkness or shadow or something that at least is become part of the image now, in the last several hundred years. And I just think that that's a very, very interesting thing to kind of hold that
Mm-hmm.
tension between those two sides of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The dark and the light. And I think that, again, it's interesting that as we're living in a moment where a lot of us are kind of rediscovering a connection to an occult practice, and finding ourselves in a position where we're realizing like that maybe our cats are this kind of like guiding spirit or just an allied force in your magical work. We have to remember then the importance of touching in with light and shadow, and both of those being important pieces of our occult work and our healing work and our psychospiritual stuff and all of the, you know, the easy. No, I'm just kidding. But the stuff that is going to make your magic so much stronger is being able to see into both of those spaces. So maybe if your familiar is a little demon, yes, maybe they're going to have litter box tricks that they play on you, but also I think that what we remember is that there is this kind of ability for us to hold that animal duality, right, between ourselves and our pets or our familiars, and like do that shape shifting work too that the familiar is able to do as part of our own healing and magical practices. So that's there. Yeah. Like, what are some modern ways that you feel I do think that our pets, obviously, it's a total no brainer. That's a familiar. Do you have other ideas about how we would like find or connect with familiar spirits in our life now?
Yeah. So I like to take my cues from them. So a lot of times when I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed, I'll just go and find them and see what they're doing. So
Mm.
one of my favorite practices to do, as simple as it is, which is kind of like a little bit of self care magic, I guess, is that when I'm in that space of or seeking deep feeling, and this is one of the things that I think we can talk about with like cats in particular. A lot of times we associate cats with the feminine, and I've done a lot of research to find out why we associate cats with the feminine, other than they obviously seem very like prissy and we project that onto the feminine. But I think that there's just this kind of weird intuitive connection that we make with it. Probably it comes from Egypt and the Egyptian god. I think, what is it, Bastet? Is
Bastet.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
the cat
exactly.
god, cat
Yeah,
goddess.
so I'm sure it has these ancient origins. Um, but when I want to connect to that feeling side within me and do a little magic around that, I'll go find where my cats are and then just kind of do what they do. And I'm not doing weird things, but like a lot of times I'll find them like in the bed curled up.
Mhm.
So I'll lay in the bed curled up next to them and I'll just sit there and I'll be like, can you give me your whatever you're doing that is, peaceful and connected to the moment, to the present moment. Like I'll kind of ask for that. So that's a little bit of a weird thing, but that got me through a lot of tension when I was like in
Mhm.
that really intense state of analysis, when I was um having all those dreams. I would often just be like, okay, I'm hitting the point where I'm overwhelmed or I'm overthinking. I'm going to go find my cat. I'm going to lay next to her. I'm going to sit wherever she sits. I'm just going to be beside her. I'm going to look at the things she's looking at out the window,
Mhm.
and just find myself in that moment. Actually, during that period of my life, it was right before I went to the grad center, actually, when I was really going through a lot of intense stuff and analysis. I would often come home very upset, thinking about so many things. I'd cry, I'd throw a pillow across the room, whatever. I would get into my moods, and my cats would always come. I remember one time I
Mhm.
came in, we had a really deep session, and I was like so upset. I held the whole thing in, and then when I got home, I just walked in the door, and it like it all just like came out of me, and I was like really upset. And it was Angel, actually, the grumpy old lady who never left the like 5 square feet that she liked to live in. And then she made it all the way down our long hallway and found me by the door and just crawled into my lap. And I was like, "You never do this. You don't touch me." Like,
Mm.
she was a very, you know, on yeah. She didn't like to be pet that much. She didn't like to be touched that much. She was kind of her own thing. So, do you have any magical ideas for familiars? How to work with them in our practice?
I think that I like the idea of taking cues from nature, and if I can maybe expand us beyond the oikos, beyond our houses, like I think a lot of times when we go out into the world, we are encountered by creatures or even plants that show up routinely. And I do think that that's always like something being presented to us as a potential allied force or figure. Um, right. And so to me, if I go for a walk and I see all those birds, I'm like, okay, next time I see these birds, I'm really going to take note of how I'm feeling, what's going on, and maybe look into the symbolism of what that animal represents in like the collective imagination. And when you're out in the world and you're feeling like you need guidance, if you're feeling like you need something to kind of buoy you or support you, definitely keeping an eye out for any creature that shows up and reminds you that there is like an animal answer to these very human questions that we go through and experiences that we have. I think is just important to me. And same thing again, like I said, for plants, flowers, stuff like that. Um, yeah, so I take that very seriously, and I consider plants to be familiars as well as animals. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that
that
counts, though. I don't know if that's if that's allowed, but
I mean, certainly. Have you ever seen Little Shop of Horrors?
I was just thinking about that. That's so funny. There's like a whole There's a whole swamp area out here in Oregon, and it's like a swamp of carnivorous plants. And
Oh
I've
God.
never gone to it because I don't know why, but I should. I like think about it all the time. I'm like, I want to
Well, you
see.
really should. That's so
Hmm.
scary.
Yeah, it's Oregon. It's terrifying here. It's like actual nature. It's very,
Oh my
very
gosh.
big. Yeah, it does not care
Yeah.
about you. It's impersonal. But carnivorous plants. So, hmm
Scary. I
hmm
I have now such a fondness for rats, which I
mm,
never had before. I mean, being a native New Yorker, rats are always just like, meh,
yeah.
they're just part of the scenery. You don't really think about them much. And then you see them all the time, so it's whatever. But then now that I've come to know this rat colony 2 blocks away, there's a apartment complex a couple blocks away that has this really, really well established rat colony
Mm.
that's highly organized.
They're very
And
smart. They're
they're
like,
very intelligent.
I saw an article recently that was like, we now know that rats are very intelligent. Is it ethical to kill them? And I'm like, no, it's not. So,
Is it
yeah.
ethical to kill them?
Mm,
Wow.
yeah.
This is like eugenics 101. Okay. Um,
Good.
but no, they are. Apparently they have like territory wars
Hmm.
and stuff. They're and my husband's cousin was just telling us that they actually, when they have these territorial wars, they'll just send one, they'll elect a hero, they'll elect a warrior, like they're in
Like
ancient Greece.
Redwall?
And they'll just like send them into the gauntlet and they'll just fight it out in the arena. And then whichever one wins is the one who gets to keep the territory. And
That's
then so that they
fascinating.
don't all have to have a battle, just their elected
Wow.
heroes. Yep. Um, so that's a fact. But yeah, I see them all the time. My husband and I, we have this little like ritual that's very silly where we'll go out, we'll go to dinner, and on our walk home, we'll be like, we're gonna go visit the rats and say hello to the rats. And so we walk along the block, and they always like, well, they'll dart across the street, and they'll like, the mom will have her little babies that she'll guide,
Mm,
to the other side of the
mm.
apartment, and we're just like, they're our friends now. And so now I see them, and I'm like, I feel, I don't know. I'm just like friends with them. I feel like we bonded. I don't know why. This is just a weird thing, but I really like rats now. Isn't that a strange thing? I never thought I would say. Cool. So
Mhm.
let's talk about some symbols now.
Yeah, I think this would be a nice time to pivot, and yeah, I've really enjoyed exploring this because it's brought up a lot of things beyond familiars about animals and just the natural world that I think is so important to stay present with. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is lovely.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to learn more about how you can support us on Patreon. There's many benefits available, including extended episodes, guided tarot meditations, and astrology transit journals. But all listeners are welcome to share a symbolic experience for us to explore on the show.
Therefore, we invite listeners to pull those symbols from their lives, whether they come from a dream or synchronicity.
Thank you to today's sharer, and please tell us your symbolic experience on our website, sorormysticapodcast.com. Jungian Online presents Jung Academy, a personal growth learning platform for you. Join expert faculty, analysts, authors, and artists for live and video classes and events in the continuing tradition of Jungian psychology. Join us live or watch later. Our courses are accessible and presented in a way that everyone can follow and enjoy. Come together in search of meaning. Come explore jungarcademy.com. And as a recent addition to the faculty, I can't encourage you highly enough to go check out jungarcademy.com.
Are you a small business looking to reach a targeted audience of people who are interested in things like spirituality, esoterica, obscure academia, holistic living, magic, the occult, or other related topics? If this sounds like you, Soror Mystica would love to invite you to become an advertiser on our show. As Soror Mystica has a highly tailored audience of mindful, curious, depth-seeking listeners, we would be delighted to be able to give your business a place to reach new eyes, new ears, and new hearts. If you're interested in becoming an advertiser, you can find our application form at our website, which is sorormysticapodcast.com/advertise with us. Thank you so much for being a part of our listener community, and we really look forward to hearing more about your unique business quite soon.
Okay, so let's talk about your centaurs. I
Okay.
think that's a good one to focus in on.
Okay, great. So I'm lucky enough to be able to share a dream of my own this week. And it's actually a kind of dream in triplicate. And I'm not going to like describe every single dream, but I learned from Mariana that when you have a dream and then it seems to repeat, we have to kind of look for like part one, two, and three. And so in
Mm,
our last episode, we were thinking about the triplicity.
yeah.
And I think that this is kind of maybe our bridge between triplicity and familiars. So
Mm,
the first dream that I had that really was bizarre, and you did say to me, like, you have to look out for another centaur dream because this
yeah.
is just ridiculous. So, the first dream that I had was that I walked into my bedroom here and I like pulled the blanket back off of my bed and there was a centaur in my bed, but the like male torso portion is separated from the horse body, and I it wasn't gory, it wasn't scary, he wasn't like in pain, it was just kind of simply a dream image of like this kind of separated centaur. And
Yeah.
I woke up and I was like, that's so crazy. The second dream I had was about centaurs again. And at this point, it was happening in my backyard. We have a kind of big wooden fence, and there's an alleyway behind our house where people do weird things, and it kind of freaks me out. So there were centaurs in the alleyway, and they were throwing trash into my yard, trying to
Mm.
get our attention. And my partner was like, I'm going to handle this, and like walked off to deal with the centaurs. And I was very concerned because I was like, centaurs are very dangerous and we should not be engaging with them. But he did. And I woke up and nothing scary happened. But they were like really, aggressive. And then the third dream that I had, and I don't know if this counts as like the part three, maybe I need a true centaur dream, but I soon after had a dream about a horse that was just running wild in my mother's backyard. And I had to put it into an enclosure to keep it from like maybe spinning itself out too fast. Like there was some concern about its running, and I had to capture it. So,
I think
in
it's part of
yeah.
it. Yeah, I think it
Hmm.
is part of it. I
Yeah.
feel like the progression is moving more and more into the animal nature,
Hmm.
right? We
Hmm.
have like first the combination of the man and the beast, right? But they're separated, so they're not
Mm.
actually together. And then the second one, they're kind of unruly, right? So they're just kind of clomping around doing their whatever thing. And then the third one, it's finally returned to its animal state and its sense of freedom.
This is why you're the best person ever. I never thought about that. That's amazing. I totally see that.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, we're bad at interpreting our own dreams, just as a rule of thumb. Everybody, don't worry if you can't interpret your own
Mhm.
dream. That's normal. This is the same. This is why I'm a good tarot reader because I just do what people can't do themselves because they're in their own brains. But yes, I think that is really interesting.
Mhm.
I wonder, the severing of the man and the beast is a very interesting symbol there.
Yeah, with centaurs always we have like a kind of this duality, and I think that this comes up probably in depth psychology literature, I would imagine, but
Yeah.
just in general, it's kind of acknowledged that the centaur is this expression of like the kind of primal animal form versus the more like logical, rational, domesticated man form
Right.
of our
Yeah.
consciousness, and
Yeah.
holding them in separation is something that we need to, I think, not we're supposed to integrate them and not ignore and banish the animal part. And that's part of the Chiron story too, right? It's like Chiron has this wound, and he doesn't have a wound on his arm or his chest or anywhere else. He has a wound on his horse leg, one of his
Yeah.
horse
Yeah.
legs. And so he has this animal body injury that he can't heal. And that's what devastates him because he has the knowledge to heal other people medicinally through the Apollonian sort of, ways of healing that he knows, but he is not able to address his own bodily suffering. So, yeah, for me, it's like, okay, are we getting closer to or farther away from the animal body? And I've actually have been thinking a lot about embodiment more so than I usually do, which is a lot because I'm a Virgo with a sixth
Yeah,
house moon.
you're always very immersed in that
I
thinking.
do
Yeah.
care. I do care deeply about. I'm not very good at it, but I like really like to just like troubleshoot and be like,
And
okay,
this
maybe
woman says
now.
this and then yet sends me pictures of every loaf of bread she bakes every day.
I really like doing things with my hands for my anxiety. And I love eating. So yeah, I'm always trying to figure out like, will this thing make me feel better? And I do think in that though, there is that over reliance on the rational and the thinking that I do. And instead
Yeah.
of like really letting myself feel into things, even though I'm deeply emotional and I like cry all the time, but there's something about my own feeling and my own, you know, I don't know, horse body nature.
Well, yeah, the animal
Yeah.
body. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a big part of it. I just started, as I was mentioning, the myth of the goddess, and I can't remember whether it's in the first chapter, the preface, but they talk right away about how nature has been rejected. This is kind of our primal issue in the patriarchal world, is that nature is rejected. The whole beginning of our patriarchal consciousness is the separation from the animal nature and the man nature of conscious thinking. And this is the split that makes us human. This is kind of what um, defines our humanity, is that we are not animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to not be animals in order to be human, because of course, if we look at it like fully scientifically, we are exactly animals. Our bodies work the same way, we function identically to everything else. We are as dependent on this earth as everything else is, and yet we have to perpetuate this illusion that it's our consciousness and our thinking minds that give us some kind of power that is beyond the natural experience. And I wonder if
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what, our conversation about familiars is about too, is how there is something about being reminded of the basic animal body and nature that we have to embrace in order to not, because I don't know. I've been thinking about death lately. Why? I'm a Scorpio. I've just been thinking about it a lot. I also had anesthesia yesterday and had a vision about what death is like.
That's the best. Yes.
So I've been thinking about death. And I keep thinking sometimes, I think I've had this thought over and over my whole life, of like, so much matters that we think matters. And then we just turn to our cats and see them lying on the bed, and we go, nothing matters to them but this exact moment that they are fed and they are rested and they are alive. And that's all that matters to them. And this is something that we forget because we're so disassociated from our actual lived experience of our body and our nature. And sometimes just that simple, that's, I think, why I like doing that so much when I get very overwhelmed, because I'm like, oh, right, this moment, I'm well, whatever I have to do, I'll do it. And maybe it's not actually as important as I think it is. But can we just be here right now? And I wonder if that's, you know, maybe your unconscious is really trying to pull that a little bit more into focus for you. Where is the part of you that's like, I'm here now, I am wild, I am this animal body that has this power. And a horse is not something without force
Mm-hmm.
and speed and real, there's real power in a horse as a symbol. And yet the man side of it is completely in the rational side of things, and really in that mental space.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there is something in your unconscious that's like, hey, we're trying to separate this out. Actually, we're trying to. This is one of the things that I think it's Edward Edinger says about the death symbol. When we see in dreams or in mythology, we see like a scythe come in and like a death sword and start cutting things up. It's symbolic of the work of differentiation of the different parts of our psyche that are ready to be looked at individually. So we can kind of say, oh, this is a part of me and this is a part of me. And I can start that work of separation in order to reintegrate it with better understanding. So, and that's exactly what you see in that first dream is the severing of the two halves. And there's no blood and there's no gore. So it sounds like in the dream, it doesn't feel like,
It's
this is
not scary.
horrible.
It's
Yeah.
just very matter of fact. It's like, well, that's a thing, and it's not scary at all. And I'm easily scared, so I would say if it was scary or not.
As we've established, talking about our haunted houses.
I love that. Thank you for that insight. And yeah, I always like wish that you could just be like a dream interpreter for people and live that way, because you're so good. You're so good at it. So
Thanks.
yeah.
I mean, I don't actually think I'm that good at it. I think I just...
That's ridiculous. I literally praise you all the time. I clearly need to praise you more.
I don't
But
believe in
you're
praise. I can't. I am a type 4 Enneagram. Nothing you can say I will ever believe. So don't
really
worry.
dumb. You're dumb then. Fine, I'll just call you dumb.
Well, you know,
Mhm.
I will remind you from ever on that you called me dumb one time.
On air.
So I'll have
So
that on
sad.
you. Yeah, well, your dreams are wild. I love your dreams. Your dreams are very rich and kind of like deeply symbolic, and they have so much in them to work with. So
Mhm.
I'm glad you shared this one. It's really good. And of course, Chiron is such a big part of it, because Chiron is such a big part of your psyche and what you understand about the stars and yourself,
Mhm.
and you're working with Chiron so intimately right now. So that's, just for people to note, that's a really good idea, is to notice themes that are repeating. I actually just had a reading. I had a couple of readings this week, now that I'm thinking about it, where people brought up animals and animals. Look at that synchronicity.
That's so cute.
One client had a dream about a puppy that they found, and then were like, oh, I can't keep the puppy, but then they had this dream that the puppy was like lost somewhere, and they had to like find it and rescue it. And then they were like, I have to. And they felt like such a profound connection to the puppy in the dream, that they were like, oh, this is my puppy now. And then I had just a client just very recently who told me that they were dreaming about snakes, like lots of dreams about snakes. And that was very interesting. And they said that the night before a reading, they'd had a dream about a green snake. And then I pulled, the last card I pulled in the reading was the magician, which of course has the green snake wrapped around his waist.
That's crazy.
Yep. And I was like, there's your snake. And it was funny because I totally thought, when they were telling me about this dream, I was like, the magician's going to come up. He's going to come up with his green snake, and he's going to be like, here's your snake. That's what we need to do. We repeat the image. So notice your dreams, notice the things that come up, even if they don't feel directly, they're not like a literal, um, reappearance of the image. Even if they're connected by theme or a similar symbol, there's going to be something to them that has a bigger pattern to examine. So just a note for everybody doing their own dream work. And always tell a friend if you're stuck on it yourself. Go tell somebody, go talk about it, because it's okay to be stuck yourself with dreams and symbols, because that's kind of the point of doing the work, is to be engaged. I mean, if we think about all those Greek philosophers sitting around, they're all telling each other everything that they were thinking. That's all they did all day long. I had a thought. You want to hear it? So I think that's the destiny I never got to live in life, that I really just wanted to sit around and tell people what I was thinking all day. So
I think that you can do that with me. So
we do that. That is true. And yeah, so that's the calling I really want. I want to be an old man in a chair. It's my grandpa, basically, telling everybody what I think and not caring what everyone else thinks. Anyway,
I'll hold that vision for you. Okay.
thanks. Well, on that ridiculous note, I think that we've had a beautiful conversation about familiars and animals today. And make sure, if you have a symbol that you want to share with us, drop that on our little on our website. We have a page that you can go and drop a dream or a symbol that you've been having, so that we have some juicy ones to bring in. Yeah, because we love being able to pull in this, but your centaur ones were too perfect for today's episode. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. This was fun, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Please consider supporting the podcast by leaving a review and following Soror Mystica wherever you listen.
You can also become a more active supporter and a member of the Soror Mystica community by joining our Patreon.
If you have a symbolic experience that you'd like to share with us for the podcast, you can tell us all about it at sorormysticapodcast.com.
The music for this podcast is written and performed by me, Mariana Lewis, with special thanks to Stefan Lewis. You can connect with both Cristina and myself on Instagram and get to know our work by clicking on the links in the show notes.
As the alchemical motto goes, as above, so below, as within, so without.
May this ancient wisdom continue to guide you deeper.
Until next time, take good care.